Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining me as I spend my third day in quarantine after returning from New York with the ski team. As yet, we are all quite well and feeling good. But of course, like all of you who are potentially also laying low and social distancing, you might have a lot of questions about the virus SARS-CoV-2, which causes the disease COVID-19. And you might remember back to our earlier vodcast where we discussed the structure of the virion and the fact that it is enveloped and that it contains a large single-stranded positive sense RNA. We know that those S spike proteins on the surface of the virus are what are so iconic, giving it that corona or crown surrounding it. Those S spike proteins bind to the surface of our cells. So as I've been, in quarantine, I've had a lot of questions and I've been thinking to myself, how long is the incubation period? That is to say, if I was exposed, say on the last day of our trip on Monday, how long would it be until I would show symptoms? And then how contagious is it? Like how many people would I transmit it to if I weren't in quarantine, if I were spreading it? So these are questions that we often ask with infections and particularly with viral infections. And so this is a comparative reproduction rate that we can look at for different viruses, and one that is on the higher level of, on average, the number of people that one sick person can infect is the measles virus. So if we look at measles, if you're sick with measles, on average, you can expect to infect 18 other people. So measles as a virus is extremely contagious. So how contagious is something like HIV? Well, on average, you might infect 4 other people if you have HIV and are unknowingly spreading it. We can see that the original SARS, on average, an infected person would infect 4 other people. We call this value the Rnaught value, so for how contagious a virus is. So right now, even as we speak, researchers are trying to determine the Rnaught value for SARS-CoV-2. And there's a great website put together by the CDCs and World Health Organization where you can find these data, and I put the link over here. So about how contagious, what is the Rnaught value for our SARS-CoV-2 virus? And they're beginning to try to hone in on that. And what you're sort of seeing here is that the Rnaught value seems to lie somewhere between 1.5 and 3.5. Remember, that means that if you're infected, on average, you will infect between 1.5 and 3.5 other individuals. But you can also see that we don't know exactly. So with time, we'll be able to see that value becoming more and more certain, and recognizing that maybe it's Rnaught is closer to what the swine flu was, or maybe it is much greater. So it looks like it's going to range somewhere above where the swine flu was. And that was one of the questions that I had right off the bat is, well, why is this so much more of a difficult situation than it was when we had the pandemic with H1N1 or the swine flu? And you can see that on this chart. It's because it is both thought to be more contagious, but also notice this, it is more deadly. So on the x-axis, the percent who die versus the y-axis, the percent that die, versus the x-axis, the R0 value, or how contagious it is. So we can see it's being potentially more contagious and more deadly than the swine flu. So that sort of helps us to understand that question of why we're responding differently to this particular situation. And then the other question, right, is how long will it be before I start to see symptoms if I was infected and I am a person who is symptomatic? Well, that's another important question to look at. So if we look at something, say, like the norovirus, my ski team remembers well contracting a norovirus at one point when we were at our fall training camp, and within a day we were all infected and we were all had this sort of vomiting diarrheal bug, but it didn't last any more than a day. Okay, so that's just on this low side of the incubation period. Whereas if you think about chickenpox is on the higher side, you may have been exposed at 14 days prior to showing symptoms, to becoming symptomatic with chickenpox. So it's really interesting to see that long incubation period. We can see that for the original SARS, it was potentially a very long period of time in which you would be spreading the disease. And this is where we're seeing the average for COVID-19. So one of the questions that I had is, I know that we've been told, our ski team, right, has been told that we need to be in quarantine for 14 days. And so you can start to see why that number might have been chosen. So the days after being infected, before showing symptoms, when a person can potentially spread the disease. So now I'm trying to think about, okay, well, one of the hard things for me is that I'd like to be able to see my mom, so my 69-year-old mother, but I have to make sure that I don't see her during this period of time when I might potentially spread the disease, because she's in that demographic that has more danger, right? If you're over 60, and certainly then if you're over 70 or if you're over 80. So if you've potentially been exposed, you should wait to see your older 80-year-old grandmother until you've passed that 14 to 15-day incubation period. So I hope this helps you. I know it's helped me a little bit in answering some questions that I've had, and I hope it's helped you as well. And I hope I can come back around and answer more questions about the SARS-CoV-2 virus.